Before we start, stay with me because this story asks one big question. What happens when humans choose mercy over fear?
The first thing the Eclipse Tribunal showed the galaxy was not the dead moon, not the children coughing blood beneath silver trees, and not the oceans of Aurelia turning black under a poison no young civilization could have made. It showed the human fleet breaking the law. 47 ships, most of them too small to be called warships and too damaged to be called brave by any sane military standard, tore through a quarantine barrier older than Earth's first cities while every ancient power in civilized space watched in disbelief. In the center of the tribunal's black glass chamber, Captain Mara Venn stood alone beneath 900 alien judges and listened as her own crime played above her in perfect silence. Human rescue shuttles descended through fire. Human engineers burned their own engines to hold open a gap in the shield. Human medics ran across an alien field toward a species that had never seen the stars. The footage was meant to shame her. It was meant to prove that humanity was reckless, primitive, dangerous, and unworthy of the seat it had only recently been granted among the elder races. Then the final image froze above the chamber. A human medic kneeling beside an Aurelian child, one hand pressed gently over the child's mouth as the cure entered her lungs, while tribunal enforcement vessels aimed weapons at the clouds above them. The judges waited for Mara to lower her head. They waited for the young human species to understand its place. They waited for fear. Mara looked up at the evidence and said, in a calm voice that carried to every listening world, "You are showing the wrong crime." No one moved. The presiding elder, Veil Tor of the First Continuum, leaned forward from his high seat. His species had ruled councils since before humanity had learned to write its dead into stone. His face did not change, because his kind had spent 500,000 years training emotion out of public judgment. But the chamber sensors recorded a brief irregularity in his pulse. Captain Mara Venn continued, "We did not break your law when we saved Aurelia. We found out why that law existed." The translation systems hesitated for less than a second, but every diplomat in the chamber noticed. They noticed because tribunal translation never hesitated. It had translated wars, surrender terms, extinction declarations, and the last messages of dying civilizations without delay. Yet for one heartbeat, the machine seemed uncertain whether a human officer had just accused the oldest court in the galaxy of murder. The prosecutors demanded her statement be struck from the record. 7 elder delegations rose at once. 3 security drones shifted closer to the prisoner's circle. Across the public networks, billions of viewers leaned closer to their screens because this was no longer a trial about disobedience. Something colder had entered the room. Mara lifted one hand, and the guards almost fired until they realized she was only holding a small black data shard between 2 fingers. "This," she said, "was buried inside your own archive." Veil Tor's voice finally changed. "Not much. Just enough." "Captain Venn," he said, "you do not understand what you are holding." Mara looked at the 900 judges, then at the frozen image of the child above them. "No," she said. "I think that is exactly what terrifies you." The first time humanity heard the words silence mandate, they were spoken in a room designed to make younger species feel small. The chamber had no windows, no flags, no weapons, and no visible doors once they sealed, only a circular table of white stone suspended above a floor so dark it looked bottomless. Captain Mara Venn had sat there with 3 human representatives, 2 legal observers, and 1 aging xenobiologist who kept looking at the elder delegates as if he could smell something rotten beneath their polished manners. The mandate was explained to them with the patience reserved for children. No advanced civilization was permitted to interfere with the natural development of a pre-contact world. No medicine. No evacuation. No warning. No correction of disasters, even preventable ones. If a young species was struck by famine, plague, impact storm, or planetary collapse, the proper action was observation. The elder races called it restraint. They called it wisdom. They called it the hard mercy of history. Dr. Elias Rowe had whispered only one sentence into Mara's private channel. "They have made a religion out of doing nothing." Mara did not answer him then, because across the table, Veil Tor was watching her with the stillness of a creature that had judged too many worlds to remember all their names. The presiding elder spoke softly, but his words filled the sealed room as if the walls themselves had learned obedience from him. He told the humans that every species believed its compassion was unique when it first reached the stars. He said every young civilization imagined itself brave enough to carry the suffering of others. Then he said the universe had taught older minds that interference often killed more than neglect. That was when the first image of Aurelia appeared above the table. It was not a military world. It was not a threat. It was a moon wrapped in pale oceans and forests of silver-barked trees that glowed under the light of a blue parent planet. Its cities were low and beautiful, built along rivers and cliff edges, with wide bridges shaped like open hands. The Aurelians had no orbital stations, no fusion drives, no weapons that could reach beyond their atmosphere. They had music carried by wind instruments, mathematics carved into pearlstone tablets, and burial gardens where the names of the dead were sung instead of written. They also had a plague. The tribunal's medical display showed infection waves spreading across the moon in red veins. At first, the lines seemed almost delicate, like cracks in old glass. Then the simulation accelerated, and entire coastal regions darkened in seconds. Population estimates fell beside the image. 1 million. 5 million. 17 million. The numbers changed faster than the human eye wanted to follow. Mara felt the room shift around her, not physically, but morally. The elder delegates did not flinch. They watched the suffering of an intelligent people as if reviewing weather patterns on a distant colony. One of them, a tall emissary from the Glass Dominion, noted that Aurelia's culture should be preserved through passive recording before collapse. Another suggested that selected artifacts might be collected from abandoned settlements once contamination risks had passed. A third asked whether the song traditions could be reconstructed from atmospheric audio. No one asked how to save them. Mara waited until the display ended. She waited until Veiltor folded his long fingers and looked to the humans, expecting the usual expression of horror, confusion, and eventual submission. Instead, she opened the file Earth had prepared on emergency humanitarian intervention and placed it on the table. "Humanity requests temporary exemption under medical necessity," she said. The translation came through cleanly. The reaction did not. Several elder delegates looked at one another in quiet surprise, as if a ceremonial statue had suddenly spoken out of turn. Veiltor did not look surprised. That bothered Mara more than if he had. "There is no exemption," he said. The answer arrived too quickly. It did not pass through review. It did not trigger consultation. It did not even sound like refusal. It sounded like something already decided long before humans entered the room. Mara kept her voice even. "Then we request permission to send unmanned delivery capsules containing broad-spectrum antivirals, with no language data, no cultural contact, no technology transfer beyond medical treatment. No. We request permission to share atmospheric synthesis patterns with their healers through anonymous biological signals. No. We request permission to evacuate infected children to quarantine facilities outside their system." For the first time, Veiltor's eyes narrowed. No. The words settled harder than the others. Dr. Elias Rowe stopped tapping notes into his wrist console. The human legal observer beside Mara inhaled sharply and then controlled it. Everyone in the room understood that something had been revealed, though no one had yet named it. The elders were not carefully weighing intervention risks. They were protecting a boundary they feared more than death. After the meeting, the humans were escorted through a corridor lined with memorial columns. Each column carried the name of a world the tribunal claimed to have preserved through non-interference. Mara slowed as they passed them. There were hundreds. Some names were carved in living metal. Some glowed beneath glass. Some were too old for the translation system to pronounce. Elias walked beside her, pale and silent, until the security drones drifted farther ahead. Then he said, "Those are not preserved worlds." Mara looked at the columns again. "What are they?" He did not answer immediately. His eyes moved from name to name with growing unease, counting patterns only a scientist trained in extinction records would notice. "I think they are witnesses." Before Mara could ask what he meant, her wrist console vibrated. A message had arrived through no official channel, no sender identity, no traceable route. It contained only 9 words. "Do not request Aurelia's medical archive in their system." Mara stared at the warning until the letters burned into her thoughts. Behind her, the sealed chamber doors opened again, and Veiltor stepped into the corridor with 3 elder judges at his side. He did not speak to her. He did not need to. His eyes dropped once to the console on her wrist, then returned to her face. Somehow, he knew about the message. And that meant the warning had not come from an enemy of the tribunal.
This is where it gets scary. Someone inside the board is helping humans.
It had come from someone inside it. Dr. Elias Rowe did exactly what the warning told him not to do, which was how Mara knew he was still human in the oldest and most dangerous sense of the word. He did not charge into the tribunal's protected archive like a thief in a cheap drama. He moved slowly, politely, and legally, using every narrow academic permission humanity had earned during its first decade of membership. He requested general epidemiological summaries first, then historical pattern comparisons, then atmospheric contamination logs. Then, buried beneath 6 layers of harmless research language, he requested Aurelia's raw medical archive. The system denied him before his finger had fully left the command surface. Elias sat very still in the dim research room aboard the human diplomatic vessel Meridian, watching the red refusal mark pulse on his screen. Most archive requests took minutes, sometimes hours, as ancient systems reviewed rank, species, purpose, and jurisdiction. This one had been rejected in less than a second. Not reviewed. Not questioned. Rejected. Across the room, Mara stood with her arms folded, looking through the narrow observation glass at the tribunal station hanging outside like a blade carved from night. Could be automatic restriction. Elias gave a quiet laugh without humor. Captain, automatic restrictions are built by people who already know what they are afraid someone might find. He tried again through a different path, this time requesting not Aurelia itself but plague classifications from moonworld biospheres with similar atmospheric ratios. The system allowed him in. Thousands of records opened. Elias moved through them faster than Mara could follow, his eyes flicking across infection curves, protein chains, mutation maps, and old casualty projections. For nearly an hour, nothing happened except the soft hum of the ship and the distant sound of crew moving with the careful silence of people who knew something was wrong but had not yet been told how wrong. Then Elias stopped breathing. Mara saw it before he spoke. His shoulders tightened. His hand hovered above the screen. On the display, a strand of molecular code rotated slowly in blue light, elegant and terrible, like a signature written by someone who never expected to be caught. "This is not natural," he said. Mara stepped closer. Elias enlarged the structure. Aurelia's plague has adaptive binding sequences. It changes behavior depending on the age, immune pattern, and neurological development of the host. Natural diseases can be brutal, but they are not usually this selective this early. This is engineered behavior.
Wait, so this was not a sickness? Someone made it on purpose?
The word engineered seemed to make the room smaller. Mara looked at the glowing code and imagined the moon below it, silver trees, river cities, children singing names in burial gardens. Who could have made it? Elias did not answer right away. That frightened her more than the question. He pulled another file from the open archive, then another, then a third so old the translation system struggled to rebuild the terminology. When he placed them side by side, the same molecular pattern appeared in each one, not identical, but related. Like descendants of the same ancestor. Like a family resemblance passing through centuries of death. "These markers are from a dead civilization," Elias said finally. "At least, officially dead." Mara felt the first cold touch of understanding. "Officially. The Achen Veil," he said. "One of the elder races before the elder races. The tribunal says they vanished 40,000 years ago after their own bioengineering collapsed their empire." Mara watched him highlight a repeating strand hidden inside the plague structure. "And their science is inside Aurelia's disease." "Yes," Elias said. "But that is not the worst part." Of course it was not. In stories, the worst part came after the audience thought they had reached the bottom. In real life, Mara had learned, the worst part usually waited because someone powerful had buried it carefully. Elias opened a sealed comparative chart and turned the screen toward her. 47 biological events appeared in a vertical list. Different worlds. Different centuries. Different species. Each one marked as natural collapse under the silence mandate. Each one carrying a distant cousin of the same genetic architecture now killing Aurelia. For several seconds, Mara heard nothing but her own pulse. "They watched this happen before," she said. Elias's voice was low. "No. I think they watched it happen again." Before Mara could respond, the ship's lights flickered once. Not enough to signal attack. Just enough to signal access. Someone had touched the Meridian's internal systems. Mara reached for her sidearm, but the screen across from Elias changed before she drew it. The medical files vanished. A black field replaced them. Then a face appeared, half hidden by distortion. The being on the screen was not human. Young, Mara thought, though she could not have explained how she knew. Narrow features. Pale green skin. Eyes too bright with fear. The uniform collar marked them as Tribunal Administrative Staff, low rank, possibly Archival Division. "You should not have opened those files," the stranger said. Mara raised the weapon anyway. "Identify yourself." "No. Not yet." Elias leaned forward. "You sent the warning." The stranger's eyes shifted toward him, then back to Mara. "I sent one warning. Others prevented more." "Others?" Mara asked. The image glitched. For one instant, the stranger's face disappeared and a second image flashed behind it. A corridor, bodies on the floor, security drones moving through smoke. Then the transmission stabilized again, but the fear in the stranger's expression had changed. It was no longer fear of being caught. It was fear of being too late. "There are people inside the tribunal who know the mandate is not what it claims to be," the stranger said. "Not many. Not enough. Some tried to expose the pattern before. Their names were removed from public record." Mara thought of the memorial columns outside the chamber, hundreds of world names standing in perfect silence. Elias had called them witnesses. Now she wondered if they were also graves for the truth. "Why warn us?" she asked. "Because humans still become angry when anger is useful." It was such a strange answer that no one spoke for a moment. The stranger continued quickly. "Most species learn caution before they learn power. Humans did not. Your history is full of terrible mistakes, but also terrible corrections. You are new enough to still believe a law can be wrong." Mara lowered the weapon a fraction. "What is happening on Aurelia?" The stranger looked away from the camera, as if hearing something outside the room where they were hiding. "Some worlds are not being protected from interference. They are being selected for it." Elias whispered. "Selected by whom?" The stranger's mouth opened, but no sound came through. A hard pulse of static cracked across the screen. When the image returned, the stranger was closer to the camera, desperate now. "If you go through official channels, Aurelia dies. If you wait for proof, Aurelia dies. If you tell Earth too soon, the tribunal will bury this beneath diplomacy until there is no one left to save." Mara felt the trap closing around them from every direction. Act without proof, and humanity would look reckless. Wait for proof, and an entire people would vanish under the polite language of law. The stranger pressed one hand against the screen from the other side. "There is a cure," they said. "There has always been a cure."
That line changes it all. Now the real crime is coming out.
Then the transmission cut off, and every alarm on the Meridian began screaming at once. The alarms did not mean the Meridian was under attack. That was the first thing Mara learned, and somehow it made everything worse. No weapons had locked onto them. No hull breach had opened along the diplomatic decks. No tribunal cruiser had crossed into firing position. Instead, every sealed data line on the ship had begun reporting unauthorized inspection. Someone was not trying to destroy them. Someone was walking through their systems with the confidence of an owner checking rooms in a house. Mara reached the bridge in less than a minute, with Elias following close behind, still carrying the portable archive drive he had ripped from the research console before the lockdown completed. The bridge crew was already moving in disciplined silence. Lieutenant Saeed had cut external communications. Navigation had disconnected the Meridian from tribunal traffic control. Security teams were sealing the corridors leading to the diplomatic suite. Every action was correct, fast, and useless against the thing that had already gotten inside. "Report," Mara said. Saeed did not look away from his station. "They are not copying our files. They are deleting the paths we used to access theirs." Elias went still beside her. "They are cleaning the trail. Can we stop it?" "Not without proving we were inside protected tribunal archives." The trap was elegant. If humanity protested, it would have to admit intrusion. If humanity stayed silent, the evidence would disappear. Mara looked at the black glass shape of the tribunal station beyond the forward window and understood something about ancient power that no briefing had ever fully explained. The elders did not need to panic. They had built systems so old, so layered, and so respected that truth itself had to pass through their permission before anyone believed it. Then Earth called. The transmission came through a hardened diplomatic channel, one of the few lines the tribunal could not legally touch without declaring open hostility. The face that appeared on the bridge display belonged to Minister Adrian Vale, head of Earth's Interstellar Affairs Division. He looked exhausted before he said a word. That told Mara he already knew enough to be afraid and not enough to be brave. "Captain Venn," he said, "you are ordered to suspend all independent investigation into Aurelia." The bridge seemed to lose temperature. Mara did not answer immediately. Around her, no one looked surprised, and that almost broke something in her. Humans had crossed oceans in sinking ships, climbed mountains because they were there, run into burning cities for strangers, and still, when enough politics gathered in one room, they could learn to sound exactly like everyone else. Minister Vale continued, choosing each word like it had been approved by a committee hiding behind another committee. "The tribunal has filed a formal concern regarding unauthorized human access to protected records. Our membership review is already fragile. Our trade corridors, medical exchanges, and colony protections depend on continued cooperation. You will return to observation status until Earth completes a full diplomatic review." Elias laughed once, softly, bitterly. Vale's eyes shifted toward him. "Dr. Rowe, I understand your concern, but unverified biological anomalies do not justify destabilizing humanity's position across civilized space." "Children are dying while you protect our position," Elias said. "And billions of humans may suffer if we lose access to tribunal protection," Vale snapped, then caught himself too late. There it was. The real fear. Not law. Not order. Not wisdom. Protection. Humanity had finally reached the stars and found the galaxy already owned by old civilizations with old rules, old weapons, and old punishments. Earth had colonies now, but not enough defenses. Trade routes, but not enough leverage. Friends, but not enough powerful ones. The elders knew exactly how young humanity still was. They knew the price of disobedience could be made larger than any one captain could carry. Mara looked at the minister and asked, "If the plague is artificial, do we still observe?" Vale's face hardened. "You do not know that. If the cure exists, do we still wait? You do not have authority to act. If the tribunal caused this, do we still ask them for permission to prove it?" The silence after that question was answer enough. Minister Vale leaned closer to the camera. For the first time, his voice lost its official polish. "Mara, listen to me carefully. I am not telling you they are innocent. I am telling you they are powerful. There is a difference, and humanity is not yet strong enough to ignore it." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge with nothing but alarm lights and the low hum of a ship trying not to be conquered from the inside. For a long moment, Mara said nothing. She looked at her crew, and every face reflected a different kind of fear. Some were afraid of the tribunal. Some were afraid of Earth. Some were afraid of what would happen if they obeyed. Those were the ones who looked the most human to her. Elias broke the silence by connecting his portable archive drive to the isolated emergency display, a system so old it had no wireless connection and no elegant interface for foreign intelligence to exploit. The screen flickered, stuttered, and then filled with fragments of stolen truth. Not enough for a court. Enough for a conscience. 47 worlds appeared in the database. Different names. Different biospheres. Different centuries. All classified under the silence mandate. All officially recorded as natural collapse. Elias opened one after another, and each file contained the same pattern hidden beneath different scientific language. Observation teams present before outbreak, restricted medical archives, cure development marked non-actionable, cultural preservation ordered before extinction. The elders had not merely watched disasters. They had arrived early enough to measure them. Then Elias found Aurelia's file. It was not labeled Plague Response. It was labeled Field Trial Continuity Assessment. No one on the bridge spoke. Mara stepped closer as Elias opened the document. The file was incomplete, damaged by the ongoing deletion sweep, but enough remained. Aurelia had been selected because its people were intelligent, cooperative, emotionally bonded, and unlikely to develop spaceflight within the next 4 centuries. An ideal, isolated subject population. The pathogen had not been released by accident. It had been introduced in controlled waves to test social collapse thresholds under invisible external pressure. Lieutenant Saeed whispered, "They are experimenting on them." Elias scrolled lower, his face gray. Not just experimenting. Comparing. Another section opened. The 47 dead worlds were not failures of non-interference. They were previous trials. Each extinction had refined the model. Each silence had protected the next crime. The tribunal had turned moral restraint into a laboratory wall, and behind it, whole civilizations had died where no one could hear them. A final line pulsed at the bottom of the broken file, half corrupted, half intact. Aurelia projected terminal phase. 72 hours.
Now the clock is running. Humans have no safe choice left.
The bridge changed after that. Not loudly. No one cheered. No one made a speech. But posture shifted. Fear did not vanish. It hardened into something usable. Humans were very good at that. Give them terror and they might shake. Give them helplessness and they might break. But give them a countdown attached to innocent lives, and somewhere deep in the species, an ancient engine began to turn. Mara looked at the moon on the distant tactical display, a pale dot beyond tribunal-controlled space. How long to reach Aurelia if we leave now? Navigation answered too quickly, because he had already calculated it. 31 hours at emergency burn. Less if we damage the core and do not care about coming back clean. Mara nodded once. Send one final appeal to the tribunal. Full emergency exemption. Medical intervention only. Copy Earth. Copy every neutral delegation we have access to. Saeed looked at her. And if they refuse? Before Mara could answer, a new message appeared on the main display. It came from the Eclipse Tribunal itself, marked Highest Authority, signed by Veil Tor. Unauthorized movement toward Aurelia will be treated as hostile interference. Any vessel attempting breach of the protected zone will be disabled or destroyed. Mara read it twice. Then she turned toward the crew that Earth had ordered to stand down, the crew the tribunal expected to frighten, the crew now staring at 72 hours until a moon of children became another silent column in an ancient hall. "Prepare the ship," she said. And somewhere in the Meridian's sealed systems, hidden beneath the warning from the tribunal, a second message arrived from an unknown sender. "Do not come with one ship. Bring witnesses." Captain Mara Venn did not send the appeal because she believed the tribunal would approve it. She sent it because history had a habit of asking whether anyone had tried the door before breaking the wall. The message left the Meridian in 3 copies, one to the Eclipse Tribunal, one to Earth, and one scattered through neutral diplomatic relays that old powers rarely watched closely because they had spent too many centuries believing small voices could not become dangerous. The tribunal answered first. The refusal arrived in 19 seconds. No explanation. No review. No hearing. Just a formal denial written in language so clean it seemed designed to hide the blood beneath it. Medical intervention remained prohibited. Aurelia remained under protected observation. Any unauthorized breach would be treated as a hostile act against galactic stability. Mara read the words while the bridge crew watched her face and learned nothing from it. Earth answered 7 minutes later. Minister Vale did not appear by video this time. The message was text only, which meant he either could not bear to look at her or did not want a recording of himself ordering humanity to let another species die. The instruction was clear. The Meridian was to remain docked in tribunal space. Captain Venn was relieved of independent command pending review. All crew were ordered to comply with senior diplomatic authority. Any violation would be considered an unsanctioned action and not representative of Earth policy. Mara stood in the center of the bridge, reading the sentence twice. Not representative of Earth policy. It was a phrase built to protect governments from courage. It was clean enough to survive committees, soft enough to avoid blame, and empty enough to carry no grief. Somewhere below them, on a moon that did not know its name had entered the records of monsters, the Aurelians had less than 72 hours before the plague entered terminal spread. The tribunal knew. Earth suspected. Everyone with enough power to act had found a reason to wait. Dr. Elias Rowe was the first to speak. They are going to make us alone. Mara looked at the dark curve of the tribunal station beyond the glass. No. They are going to try. She walked to the command console and opened a channel not to the tribunal, not to Earth, and not to any official fleet network. It was an old emergency band used by human civilian vessels before the galactic traffic system had agreed to recognize Earth-standard distress protocols. It reached freighters, mining ships, medical craft, survey boats, colony transports, religious vessels, engineering tugs, fuel haulers, and anything else built by humans who still believed a bad signal was better than no signal. Lieutenant Saeed turned slowly from his station. "Captain, that band is not secure." "I know. If the tribunal hears this, they will have record of intent." Mara looked at him. "Good." The bridge went still. She activated the channel. Her face appeared on every human receiver within jump range, though she did not know how many there were and did not ask. She did not make her voice dramatic. She did not need to. There are moments when truth does not require performance because the facts themselves have teeth. This is Captain Mara Venn of the Meridian. Aurelia is dying under tribunal quarantine. We have evidence the plague is artificial. We have evidence the cure exists. We have been ordered not to intervene. Any ship that moves with us may lose protection, status, license, or command. No one is ordered to follow. No one will be judged for staying away. But if you are close enough to hear this, then you are close enough to know what we are choosing. She paused, and in that pause the bridge seemed to hold the weight of every human who had ever heard a call for help and looked around to see who would move first. Then Mara said, "Children are dying while cowards debate. Meridian departs for Aurelia in 12 minutes. Departs for Aurelia in 12 minutes.
This is pure human fire. No order, no fear, just action."
She ended the transmission. For those 12 minutes, nothing happened. That was the cruel part. Courage, when spoken aloud, often expects an echo. Instead, the universe answered with silence. The navigation clock counted down. Engineering pushed the core beyond safe civilian limits. Security teams distributed sidearms no one wanted to use. Elias copied the damaged archive onto every physical drive aboard the ship, as if truth might survive better when broken into many hands. The crew performed each task with quiet precision, but no one mentioned the empty tactical display. No ships came. At 3 minutes to departure, Saeed cleared his throat. "Captain." Mara turned. A single contact had appeared on the edge of the local grid. It was not a military vessel. It was a human cargo hauler registered out of New Nairobi, old, heavy, and slow, with a cracked heat signature and a cargo hold large enough to carry either machinery or miracles. Its transponder name appeared in plain letters. Stubborn Grace. A voice came through before anyone hailed them. The captain sounded old and annoyed. "Meridian, this is Grace. We have 6 tons of atmospheric sterilizers, 2 field kitchens, 1 useless nephew, and a medic who says she can make herself useful if nobody asks about her license. We cannot fight anything bigger than a customs drone, but we can carry weight." No one on the bridge laughed, though several tried and failed in ways that looked suspiciously like breathing again. Another contact appeared. Then another. A survey ship with deep-ground scanners. A missionary vessel with water purifiers. 3 asteroid tugs with industrial cutting lasers technically classified as mining equipment and obviously about to be used for something else. A private medical frigate that had deserted a conference dock without filing departure clearance. A colony school transport that had emptied its passenger cabins and filled them with emergency beds. None of them were warships. None of them should have mattered. Then the tactical display bloomed. Not with a fleet, not yet, but with human stubbornness given engines. Ships appeared from relay shadows and maintenance docks, from fuel lanes and forgotten parking orbits, from places the tribunal had not bothered to watch because no ancient civilization measured history by the choices of haulers and nurses. They answered one by one, each carrying a little food, a little medicine, a little courage, or simply the willingness to be seen moving in the right direction. Elias stood beside Mara, eyes fixed on the growing cluster. They came. Mara watched the display, and for the first time since Aurelia's file opened, something like pain loosened in her chest. "No," she said softly. "They decided who they were." The tribunal responded 9 seconds later. Every screen on the meridian flashed red as Veiltor's voice filled the bridge, no longer patient, no longer ceremonial, no longer pretending this was only about law. "Captain Venn, stand down. If you proceed, humanity will be declared an unstable species." Mara gave Saeed a nod. The ship turned toward Aurelia. Veiltor's voice sharpened. "You will lose your seat. You will lose your protections. You will lose the future your people have begged to enter." Mara looked at the ships gathering behind her, too few to win a war, too many to erase quietly, and finally opened the channel. "Then you never understood humans," she said. The Meridian jumped first. Behind it, the impossible little rescue fleet followed. The jump to Aurelia should have taken 31 hours, but the Meridian arrived in 26 with its engines screaming hot enough to make the engineering deck glow behind the shielded walls. 3 civilian ships dropped out of jump behind it with damage alarms already firing. 2 more arrived spinning slightly off-axis, their navigation systems overloaded by the emergency burn. The rest came in scattered waves, ugly and brave and impossibly human, forming not a battle line but something far more offensive to the ancient mind, a refusal to be sensible. Aurelia hung below them, pale and luminous, a moon too beautiful to look like a crime scene. Its silver forests reflected the blue light of the giant planet behind it, and from orbit the ocean still looked clean. For one merciful second, Mara understood how the tribunal had hidden behind distance for so long. From high enough above suffering, everything looked peaceful. Then the medical overlays loaded, and the illusion died. Red spread across the moon like internal bleeding. Infection clusters pulsed over every major settlement. Atmospheric scans showed funeral smoke rising from coastal cities. Emergency heat signatures gathered around open plazas where Aurelians had dragged their sick into the air because their homes had become too crowded with dying. They had no idea ships had arrived above them. They had no word for tribunal. No word for humanity. No word for engineered pathogen, quarantine enforcement, or interstellar law. They only knew that their children were burning with fever and their elders had stopped singing the names of the dead because there were too many names to carry. Elias stood behind Mara on the bridge, one hand braced against a console as the ship shook from core strain. "Terminal spread has accelerated." "How long?" Mara asked. He looked at the numbers and did not soften them. 49 hours before the cure stops being a rescue and becomes archaeology. Before anyone could answer, the space around Aurelia changed. A dark ring appeared first as a shadow against the stars, then hardened into geometry as thousands of hidden projectors awakened around the moon. The quarantine barrier was not a simple shield. It was a layered containment cage, old tribunal technology, built to prevent anything from reaching the surface and anything from leaving it. It unfolded in silence, black panels blooming across orbital space like the petals of some enormous dead flower. The elders had not waited for humans to arrive. They had prepared the grave and were now closing the lid. Lieutenant Saeed's voice cut through the bridge. "Barrier seal in 18 minutes. Mara looked at the civilian contacts behind them. "Can we breach it?" Engineering answered over the internal channel, breathless and furious. "Not safely. I did not ask for safely." A pause followed. Somewhere deep in the ship, metal groaned. "We can punch a temporary corridor if we overload the jump core and link with external power sources. But the corridor will collapse fast. Anything going down must go in the first wave. Anything coming back may not have a way out." The stubborn Grace transmitted before Mara could respond. "Meridian, patch us into your power grid." Saeed stared at the comm panel. "Grace, your reactor is commercial grade. It will burn out." The old captain's voice returned, still annoyed, still human. "Everything burns out eventually. Use it while it is being dramatic." One by one, ships volunteered power. Mining tugs. Medical frigates. Survey craft. A transport with the words "Home Before Dawn" painted across its hull. They had come carrying medicine, scanners, water purifiers, field beds, and food, but now they offered the one thing no mission plan could replace: their ability to leave. Mara listened as the improvised network formed around her ship, and she understood that the tribunal had miscalculated something fundamental. It thought humans valued survival above meaning. It had never studied them closely enough to know how often they traded one for the other. Then the enforcement fleet arrived. 6 tribunal vessels emerged beyond the barrier line, vast and silent, their hulls smooth as carved bone. They did not rush. They did not need to. Each ship carried enough force to disable the entire human rescue group without appearing to make an effort. Targeting warnings lit every station on the meridian. Civilian transponders flickered as weapons locks passed over them and held. Veiltor appeared on the main display, framed by the cold architecture of command. Captain Ven, your presence has already been recorded as hostile interference. Withdraw now, and individual vessels may receive leniency. Mara looked at the timer. 15 minutes until seal. You are blocking medicine from reaching a dying people, she said. We are preserving lawful order. No, Mara said. You are preserving evidence. For the first time, Veiltor did not answer immediately. It was only a fraction of silence, but on the bridge it landed like proof. He recovered. If your ships attempt breach, they will be disabled. Mara turned away from the display before he finished speaking. Begin corridor formation. The tribunal fired warning shots. White lances crossed the darkness and detonated ahead of the human fleet, close enough to rock the smaller vessels and overload 3 comm arrays. One mining tug lost attitude control and drifted out of formation before its crew manually corrected using chemical thrusters. A school transport reported injuries but held position. Not one ship turned back. That was when the first unexpected signal arrived. It came from one of the tribunal enforcement ships. Not a message. A malfunction report broadcast openly across command frequencies. Primary targeting array offline. Then from another vessel, weapons calibration failure. Then a third, internal safety lock engaged. Saeed stared at the readouts as if the universe had suddenly developed a sense of humor. Captain, he said slowly, some of their guns are going dark. Elias whispered. The clerk said there were others. Mara looked back at Veiltor's image and saw, for the first time, real anger beneath the ancient control. Not fear of humans. Not fear of lawlessness. Fear that obedience was cracking inside his own machine. The corridor opened.
This is the rescue moment. Small human ships are facing giant power.
It was not elegant. It was not clean. It tore through the quarantine barrier like a wound made of blue-white fire, held open by human reactors burning past safe limits and ships shaking themselves apart to keep the passage alive. Mara gave the launch order, and the first medical shuttles dropped toward Aurelia. Below them, in fields outside dying cities, the Aurelians looked up and saw stars falling in controlled lines through the broken sky. Some ran. Some knelt. Some simply stared, too sick or too stunned to understand that strangers were arriving not to conquer them, not to judge them, not to record their final songs, but to fight death beside them. The first shuttle entered the atmosphere. Then the second. Then the third. On the bridge, the barrier timer vanished, replaced by a new warning as tribunal systems adapted. The corridor was collapsing faster than predicted. Engineering shouted that they had 7 minutes before the gap sealed permanently. 7 minutes to move enough cure, enough medics, enough hope through a hole the oldest powers in the galaxy were trying to close. Mara gripped the command rail as the meridian shook hard enough to throw sparks from the ceiling panels. Send everything, she said. And just as the final wave of shuttles launched, the main display changed to show a new contact rising from Aurelia's night side, where no advanced technology should have existed at all. For 3 seconds, no one on the meridian understood what they were seeing. The object rising from Aurelia's night side did not match any known tribunal design, any human rescue craft, or any technology the Aurelians should have possessed. It climbed slowly through the upper atmosphere, wrapped in a shell of pale green light, too controlled to be debris and too silent to be a distress launch. The quarantine barrier bent around it as if the ancient shield recognized something older than its own command. Lieutenant Saeed ran the scan twice. Then a third time. His voice changed on the third. Captain, that object is not launching from a city. It is launching from beneath the ocean. Elias moved to the science station so quickly he nearly fell when the ship shook again. Aurelia's moon map shifted across his screen, showing deep-sea terrain below the object's origin point. There were no settlements there, no industrial zones, no heat grids, no signs of a civilization capable of building machines beneath an ocean. Yet the object was rising from a buried structure almost 20 kilometers below the waterline, and that structure had just begun broadcasting a signal. Not to the humans. To the tribunal. The moment the signal touched open space, Veil Tor vanished from the display. Every tribunal enforcement vessel repositioned at once, not toward the meridian, not toward the rescue fleet, but toward the rising object. Their weapons, the few still functioning, shifted with sudden precision. The elders were no longer trying to stop the cure. They were trying to destroy whatever had just awakened. Mara felt the pattern snap into place without fully understanding it. They knew it was there. Elias stared at the translation feed as alien mathematics poured across his console. More than that. I think they were waiting for it. Below, the human shuttles were already landing. Medical teams sprinted through silver grass toward the first quarantine camps, carrying the cure in sealed packs while Aurelians watched from behind stone walls and broken clinic doors. Some of the sick were too weak to lift their heads. Others recoiled when the humans approached, because mercy from the sky looked too much like judgment until the first child stopped coughing. For one breath, the rescue seemed possible. Then the tribunal fired. 3 lances of white light cut toward the object rising from the night ocean. Before Mara could issue any order, one of the human mining tugs broke formation and pushed itself into the firing line. It was not built for combat. Its hull was designed to drag or through dead space, not intercept weapons from ships older than human nations. The first beam tore through its forward frame. The second ruptured its power spine. The third never reached the ocean-borne object because the tug exploded in its path, scattering fire across the darkness like a man-made sunrise. The bridge went silent except for alarms. The tug's transponder vanished. No final message came. Mara closed her eyes for half a second, not long enough to mourn, only long enough to remember that someone had chosen to be there. Then she opened them. Name. Saeed swallowed. Iron Mercy.
That ship had no chance, but it still stood in the way.
The name hung in the air, and every human ship heard it. Something changed in the fleet. Until that moment, they had been a rescue group trying not to become a war. After that, they became a wall. Cargo haulers rotated their broad bellies toward tribunal weapons. Survey ships burned their sensors blind to jam targeting beams. Medical frigates kept launching shuttles even as their hulls screamed under radiation wash. No one had trained these crews to fight an elder fleet. No academy had written doctrine for this. It was simply the oldest human tactic in existence. Put yourself between death and someone who cannot stop it. Veil Tor returned to the display, and his composure was gone. Captain Ven, you do not understand what you are protecting. Mara's hands tightened on the command rail. Then explain it. The presiding elder looked past her, as if speaking now to the entire galaxy. That structure is not Aurelian. It is not innocent. It is a remnant of the Arcan Veil. If it fully awakens, the consequences will extend beyond this moon. Elias shook his head slowly. Convenient time to mention that. Veil Tor's eyes cut toward him. Your ignorance has already cost lives. Mara stepped closer to the display. Behind her, the corridor through the shield continued collapsing. Below her, medics were delivering cure doses by hand. Above her, the object kept rising, untouched by gravity in a way that made every sensor aboard the Meridian question its own readings. You infected the planet to wake it, she said. This time, Veil Tor did not deny it. The absence of denial reached the bridge before any words could. It reached the crew. It reached the civilian ships. It reached the hidden listeners across the tribunal vessels where officers had already begun disobeying quietly. And because Saeed had never stopped recording, it reached every neutral relay still carrying Mara's original call. Veil Tor realized it 1 second too late. His image disappeared, but the damage was done. Elias moved fast, hands shaking as he pulled the buried archive files from the emergency drive and linked them with the live tribunal transmission. He connected the plague markers, the 47 dead worlds, the mandate records, the medical suppressions, the controlled infection waves, and now Veiltor's own failure to deny the truth. It was not clean. It was not complete. But it was enough to make silence impossible. "Broadcast it," Mara said. Saeed looked at her. "To whom?" Mara looked at the tactical screen, where the rescue fleet burned, the barrier collapsed, and the rising object carried the secret the Elders had killed worlds to hide. "Everyone." The Meridian opened every channel it had. Across civilized space, courtrooms, stations, colony domes, merchant lanes, mining platforms, academic archives, and private homes received a broken but undeniable record of something ancient and obscene. The Silence Mandate had not merely allowed death. It had protected experiments. The Elders had not preserved young worlds. They had used them. Aurelia was not a tragedy the Tribunal had failed to stop. It was a crime scene the Tribunal had tried to seal. For the first time in recorded memory, the Eclipse Tribunal lost control of the story. The reaction did not come as one roar. It began as confusion, then denial, then demands for verification, then the first small delegation refusing tribunal orders in public. A medical vessel from a species that had voted for the mandate turned toward Aurelia without clearance. Then a Solari cruiser cut its weapons lock and moved between a tribunal ship and the human fleet. Then another. Then a third. Veiltor's authority fractured across open space. But victory did not arrive. The ocean-borne object reached orbit, and the pale green light around it unfolded into a shape no one aboard the Meridian could name. It was not a ship. It was not a weapon. It was a vault, ancient and alive with stored intelligence, and it began transmitting in a language that predated the tribunal itself. Elias translated the first complete line, and the blood drained from his face. Mara turned toward him. "What does it say?" He looked up from the screen, and for the first time since the crisis began, he looked truly afraid. "It says the experiment is complete," he whispered. "And it has identified humanity as the final variable."
Just when we think humans won, the old secret wakes up.
For a moment, the human fleet forgot the tribunal. It forgot the weapons, the collapsing quarantine corridor, the injured ships venting atmosphere into the dark, and the ancient judges who had tried to turn mercy into a crime. Every eye turned toward the vault above Aurelia, because the thing rising from the ocean was not reacting like a machine that had just awakened. It was reacting like a witness that had been waiting for someone worthy of hearing its testimony. The vault's transmission expanded across every open channel, forcing itself into languages it had never known until the moment it touched the Meridian's translation grid. The first words were broken, then cleaner, then terrible in their simplicity. The Arcan Veil had not vanished. They had built the vaults before their fall, scattering them across young worlds as moral traps for the civilizations that would come after them. Each vault slept beneath a living planet and measured what the powerful did when the powerless began to die. Elias translated with a shaking voice as the truth unfolded. The plague had not been created by the vault. It had been designed by the tribunal from stolen Arcan science to trigger the vault's awakening. 47 worlds had not merely been experiments in collapse. They had been failed tests, murdered because the Elders wanted access to whatever the vaults would reveal when a younger species finally chose compassion over law. Each time, the tribunal had watched, waited, and then buried the result when the dying world produced nothing but silence. Aurelia had been different because humanity had arrived. The vault had not awakened for the Elders. It had awakened because strangers had crossed the barrier. Because civilian ships had burned their reactors to carry medicine. Because a mining tug named Iron Mercy had died protecting a people it had never met. Because humans, young and frightened and politically weak, had done the one thing the galaxy's oldest powers had spent ages explaining away. They had helped. Veiltor tried to interrupt the broadcast. His command code struck the vault like stones thrown into an ocean. The tribunal station sent override after override, legal authority layered over ancient access keys stolen from dead empires, but the vault ignored them all. Then it did something no one expected. It replayed the last 47 trials, not as data, not as reports, but as memories gathered from the worlds that had died. Across the galaxy, viewers saw children beneath different skies waiting for help that never came. They heard songs recorded as cultural preservation, while the singers weakened. They saw elder observation ships hanging above storms, famines, plagues, and poisoned rivers, close enough to save millions and cold enough to count them instead. The Tribunal's greatest weapon had always been distance. The Vault destroyed that distance in a single transmission. Then the human footage appeared. Not the edited prosecution reel. Not the clean version meant to make humanity look reckless. The Vault showed everything. Mara's final appeal. Earth's refusal. The civilian ships answering one by one. Engineers praying over overheating cores. Medics entering quarantine zones without knowing whether the cure would save the infected or kill them faster. The Iron Mercy moving into the line of fire with no dramatic speech, no heroic final words, only a course correction so deliberate that no court in existence could call it an accident. Silence spread through civilized space, but it was not the old silence. It was not obedience. It was the silence of people realizing that the law they trusted had been built over a grave. On the Meridian's bridge, Mara watched the Tribunal fleet begin to break formation. One enforcement ship powered down its weapons. Then another. Then a third transmitted a refusal to fire, signed by its entire command crew. The Solari cruiser moved fully into the gap beside the human ships, and within minutes vessels from smaller civilizations began appearing at the edge of the system, not enough to fight a war, but enough to make the Tribunal understand that any punishment would now have witnesses. Veil Tor appeared one final time, older somehow than he had looked minutes before. His face was still controlled, but control no longer looked like strength. It looked like something empty holding its shape out of habit. "You have destabilized the order that protected this galaxy," he said. Mara looked past him to Aurelia, where the first medical reports were coming in from the surface. The cure was working. Not everywhere. Not perfectly. Not in time for all of them. But the infection curve had bent. The red maps were no longer spreading without resistance. "No," Mara said. "We found the people it was protecting you from." The Tribunal tried to pass judgment anyway. It opened an emergency vote to censure humanity, revoke its membership, and classify all rescue vessels as unlawful actors. But when the roll call began, something impossible happened. The smallest delegations refused to answer. Then a mid-tier coalition abstained publicly and demanded investigation. Then one elder judge, a being from a civilization that had supported the silence mandate for 9,000 years, stood and said that any law requiring children to die for the comfort of the powerful was not law but cowardice wearing ceremonial robes. The vote collapsed. The silence mandate was suspended before the cycle ended. Veil Tor was removed pending inquiry, though everyone knew inquiry was too small a word for what was coming. 47 dead worlds had no survivors to thank humanity, but they now had names spoken aloud in the chamber that had once buried them. Aurelia, against every projection, remained alive. Mara did not attend the first celebration on the surface. She spent it in the Meridian's damaged medical bay, recording the names of the ships that had not made it home clean. Some would be repaired. Some would be salvaged. One would remain forever as a field of metal fragments above the moon it had helped save. When Elias found her there, he handed her a message from Aurelia's first recovered translation team. It was an image, drawn by a child with unsteady hands. A silver forest. A dark sky split open. Small figures looking upward as burning stars fell toward them. Beneath it was one sentence, translated carefully into human words. "We heard you come through the dark." Mara read it once, then again, and for the first time since the trial began, she allowed herself to sit down. Outside, the galaxy was changing in ways no one could yet control. Humanity had lost its innocence before the elders, but gained something far more dangerous. It had gained witnesses. It had gained allies. It had gained the attention of every world that had ever been told to suffer quietly for the sake of order. And far beneath Aurelia's ocean, the ancient vault sent one final private signal to the Meridian before falling silent again. "There are more tests. Be ready."
And this is why the story hits hard. In a cold galaxy, humans did not stay quiet. They came through the dark.